Hello YouTube. I'm making this video in response to a post I saw on Reddit under the subreddit Explain Like I'm 5 that was titled, "What has changed in the last 40 years so that it now takes two incomes to maintain a household?" Well, this just pissed me off because there's nothing to explain here. This is a liberal progressive talking point with absolutely no basis in reality. And I'm going to prove this to you in two ways in this video. First of all, I'm going to prove to you that the transition from a one-income earner household to a two-income earner household happened from the 40s until the 80s and not in the last 40 years. It began the second World War II ended. The second thing I'm going to prove to you is I'm going to prove to you that the median household is not a two-income earner household. The median income for a two-income earner household is close to $90,000, way above the overall median. So, in order to go through the real data, I'll tell you exactly what to do. We're going to go to the U.S. Census Bureau income page. We're going to click on historical data, and then we're going to click on families. So for our first piece of evidence, we're going to click on table F12. Earners. Families by median and mean income. And this will give us a Microsoft Excel document, but what we'll be able to do is we'll be able to create a graph of the percent of families that have had two income earners versus one income earners over time. When we do, the graph looks something like this. Now, as you can see, the percent of families with two income earners did not begin increasing in the 70s, and it didn't even really accelerate in the 70s. In fact, nothing happened 40 years ago that wasn't already happening. Now we can also take a look at a graph of the percent of families with one income earner and plot them on the same graph. The two follow the same trend. The trend from the one income earner family to the two income earner family happened from 1947 to 1990, but they've actually reversed in the last 25 years. Now the thing is we don't know if this increase in one income earner families is due to an increase in divorce or if it's due to people having more babies out of wedlock. So, in order to help close this loophole, we look at table F7, which is median and mean income by type of family. But type of family includes married couple families as well as married couple families with a wife in the paid labor force. So we can now make a graph of what percentage of married couple families had a wife entering the labor force. And when we do, it looks a lot like this. It's pretty much the same as the old graph, except it didn't really go down. But the trend still holds up that women have been entering the labor force long before the 70s. And the third and final piece of evidence I have is, forget the U.S. Census Bureau, forget families, forget two income earners, forget married couples, and just look at the labor force participation rate of women. Women have been entering the workforce since they began keeping track of this in 1948, and once again they stopped around 1990. In the first quarter of 1948, about 32% of women were in the labor force. By the time Ronald Reagan was elected president, 52% were in. So there's no way in heck that this trend of women entering the labor force and moving towards a two-income earner household began in the 70s. It clearly began much sooner. The question we need to ask is, why are people pushing this obviously bullshit talking point? The reason they're feeding us this lie is because they want us to conclude that the number of income earners is correlated to something that it's not actually correlated to in real life, which is, of course, the struggles of the middle class. The line that's being fed to us is, back when unions were stronger and the middle class had it better, one income earner was good enough to support a whole family. But then Ronald Reagan came along and shipped all of our jobs overseas, and now there's this splurge in two income earner families. The way that they get you to believe this bullshit talking point is about lying to you about the history of two income earner families. How could there be a surge of two income earner families in response to wage stagnation if this trend began all the way back in the 1940s. So wages have been stagnant since World War II. Look at these graphs of the percentage of married couples with a wife in the paid labor force. It's obviously not tied to wage stagnation in any way. In fact, let's just do this quick thought experiment. If women entered the labor force to make up for their husbands' lost wages, wouldn't there have been a surge of women entering the labor force when George Bush ran for president? And yet, the liberals spin this as, oh, the economy was bad under George Bush. Very few jobs were created. Oh, very few jobs were created when George Bush was president? You mean women can't just enter the labor force willy-nilly simply because their husbands are struggling? It actually requires jobs to be created? It's ridiculous. Now that we've debunked all that liberal bullshit, let's debunk one last talking point. So I'm sure that you've heard that the median household income is around $50,000. It was about $54,000 in 2014. Now that part is true, but liberals love to lie to you about what the median household looks like. They want you to think that the median household has 2 full-time workers, each earning $27,000 a year or $13 an hour. This talking point is absolute bullshit, and I can prove it to you 2 ways. Alright, first of all, the total number of hours worked by all Americans, full-time and part-time, was 239 billion hours in 2014. The total number of households is 124 million. You take the total number of hours worked and you divide them by the total number of households, and you get 1,900 hours worked per household. So obviously the average household doesn't have 2 income earners if that's the total number of hours worked. The second way I can prove it to you is just to show you the exact number. There were 39 million households with 2 income earners in 2014. So only about 31% of households actually have 2 income earners. You see, the problem with these types of arguments is that when we picture our typical American household, we typically picture a mother, a father, 2 kids, a cute little fluffy dog, and their nice suburban house. And so when you hear median household income is $54,000, you typically think that that type of family has a median income of $54,000. But it turns out there's a lot more senior citizens out there than you like to think. There's a lot of 1 income earner families out there. There's a lot of non-families, people living by themselves. And it turns out that this really isn't your median family after all. Of the 124 million households that exist in the U.S., only 60 million are married couple families. Of those, only 35 million have a wife in the paid labor force. So that means that only about 25% of households are married couples with wife in the paid labor force. And it turns out that these people disproportionately make up the top 20, top 30, or top 40% of Americans. Their median income is way above the overall median. So here's an example of some median incomes by income group. The median household income for a household with 2 income earners is $88,202. The median household income for a family with 2 income earners is $91,362. The median household income for a married couple family with children underneath the age of 18 is $87,420. And the median household income for a family of 4 is $83,413. Finally, when we get to not just 2 income earners, but specifically a married couple in which the husband works a full-time year-round job and the wife works a full-time year-round job, the median income is $115,144. On top of these numbers being way above the overall median, they're also increasing even though the overall median is kind of flat or going up by a little. The median household income for a family with 2 income earners has actually gone up by $27,000 since 1980. Folks, I think I've said everything that I want to say on this subject, but just have 2 takeaways from this video. First of all, your median household is not 2 full-time workers. Those people make in the 90 to 100 grand range, and their wages aren't stagnant. They keep going up over time. Our overall median household income is slowly starting to resemble senior citizens and bachelors and bachelorettes rather than the families that they used to. So the overall median's a bit misleading because we're kind of experiencing a Simpsons paradox. The second point that I want you to take away from this video is that the trend towards a 2-income earner family is not bad and traced all the way back to the 1940s. Anyone who tells you that it began with Ronald Reagan or in the 1970s is clearly lying to you so that you'll reach some correlation causation fallacy in your head that doesn't exist in real life. Okay, that's it for now. Take care, everybody.